I have a cognitive psychology exam tomorrow. You know what that means?
Annalise explains. Yay!
But first, a bit of a disclaimer. So, I did not write these review questions. They are in the study guide provided by the wonderful Dr. Sahakian through the Psych 24 class at UIUC. And I am not an expert, I am a freshman neuroscience major. So, I'm going to be answering these questions based on everything I've learned in class, but if it's not right, you've been warned. What is the key difference between semantic and episodic memory? So semantic memory can be described as like a dictionary or an encyclopedia. It contains the facts that you know about the world, such as the capital of Illinois is Springfield, or Halloween is on October 31st. You probably don't remember where you learned those specific information, and it's shared by most people in your specific cultural environment. For example, most Americans know when Halloween is or the capital of Illinois. However, someone in, let's say, Japan might not know the exact day for Halloween or that the capital of Illinois is not Chicago. Episodic memory, on the other hand, is your personal memory of events, such as the first concert you went to, or when you dyed your hair red in the dorm room bathroom last Thursday at 11 p.m. You probably remember where you were when these events happened, and these memories aren't shared with other people, unless they were said friend helping you dye your hair in the bathroom on Thursday at 11 p.m. How do reaction time studies provide evidence for the organization of semantic memory? So studies demonstrate that we are faster at recognizing typical words despite being at the same hierarchical structure of other words. So this demonstrates that our semantic memory is organized more according to the feature list in the ACTR model. Describe the basic structure of a semantic network. A semantic network represents ways that we connect with different ideas. For example, my dog is a mammal, and squirrels are also mammals. Mammals are a type of animal, and another type of animal is a bird. And geese are a type of birds. And like my dog, geese are menaces. Explain the concept of spreading activation and how it works in semantic networks. Spreading activation is when one semantic network is activated and it then activates another connected idea. I might be thinking about my dog, and then about how cute my dog is, and then I'll be thinking about how cute kittens are. What are the main limitations of the Collins and Quillian hierarchical network model? So the hierarchical network model doesn't explain the typicality effect, which is when we are quicker to recognize ideas when they are typical of a group, even though they may be in the same hierarchy as another idea. For example, you will likely be faster at recognizing that an apple is a fruit compared to a tomato, even though they are the same hierarchy level of fruit. This is because an apple is a more typical example of a fruit. The hierarchical model, however, would predict that you would recognize the apple and the tomato as being a fruit in the same amount of time, which is just not true given the evidence. How does the Smith, Shobin, and Rips feature list model differ from the hierarchical network model? So rather than focusing on hierarchies and degrees of separation to determine closest of ideas, the feature list model focuses on characteristics of ideas and how these characteristics overlap, saying that the more overlap there is, the closer two ideas are. It also accounts for the typicality effect by emphasizing shared or usual traits. For example, under the feature list model, an apple will be identified faster as a fruit because apples and fruit have the same characteristics of tending to be sweet, eaten as a snack, have seeds, and so on. Whereas tomatoes really only overlap on the has seeds criterias because tomatoes don't tend to be very sweet and aren't really eaten as a snack as often as apples are. What are the advantages of the ACTR network model over earlier network models? The ACTR model emphasizes the role of use/experience when it comes to the strength of pathways and connections. This explains issues with earlier network models and further accounts for cultural influences over pathways. For example, my strong connection between apples and fruit can be partly contributed to the frequency that I, a Midwesterner, eat apples. Someone who grew up in the tropics, for example, might first think of a mango when they're asked about a fruit. Define connectivity and resonance effects and explain how they influence memory. The connectivity effect is the phenomena where ideas with more densely connected associations in their network are better remembered. The resonance effect is when ideas that have many connections going back towards the target are remembered. Or simply put, they have associations that make you think of the target. What is the DRM effect, and how does it demonstrate the reconstructive nature of memory? I'm going to read you a list. Pane, blinds, curtain, house, door, light, sill, mailbox. Okay, let that sit in for a second. Was window on that list? If you said yes, then you just demonstrated the DRM effect, in which we falsely remember a word that wasn't there but is related to presented words. How does network size influence memory differently in associative cueing tests versus cued recall tests? Ideas in small existing networks are better remembered in associative cueing tests, but not in cued recall tests. Explain how schemas can lead to both accurate and inaccurate memories. So schemas are well-integrated chunks of information about the world, people, events, or actions. They can help us remember information such as, I met this new person, so I must have shook their hand. Because when we meet new people, we often shake their hands, putting the action in our schema of meeting new people. They can also have us misremember things when the event didn't go as normal, such as remembering you sat down, looked at a menu, and then ordered at a restaurant, when in reality you already knew what you wanted to order, so you didn't even look at the menu. What are the 5 key components involved in knowing a language? The 5 key components of knowing a language are phonemes, which are the way things sound, morphemes, parts of words that have meanings and we know how to use them, syntax, which is the grammar, semantics, which is what words actually mean, and pragmatics, which is what we mean when we say the words. Briefly describe the 2 types of aphasia and the brain areas affected in each. Wernicke's aphasia is caused by damage to Wernicke's area of the brain and affects language comprehension. Someone with Wernicke's aphasia will speak fluently, but their phrases won't make any sense. For example, they could say, the horse had the tape. Those are all words, but the sentence didn't have any meaning. Broca's aphasia is caused by damage to Broca's area of the brain and affects language production, but comprehension tends to be unharmed. Someone with Broca's aphasia will have a hard time talking and communicating in general, often resulting in what is Someone with Broca's aphasia will have a hard time talking and communicating in general, often resulting in what is known as telegraphic speech, where they leave out words with grammatical meanings such as prepositions. For example, they could say Monday work barista to lecture, which can be understood, but is not grammatically correct. Explain the concept of immediacy of interpretation in the sentence processing. Immediacy of interpretation means that we start to look for meanings of words as we read them instead of waiting to read the sentence before starting interpretation. Differentiate between transient and permanent ambiguity in sentences. Provide an example of each. Transient ambiguity is when ambiguity or confusion in a sentence is cleared up by another part of the sentence. For example, the old fly for less. In the beginning of that sentence, you may be confused on whether or not we're talking about an old person taking a flight in a plane or like an actual old fly. However, by the end of the sentence, you understand that they mean that old people can get cheaper flights. Permanent ambiguity is when the ambiguity or confusion in a sentence is not cleared by another part of the sentence. For example, the base is gray. If you're just reading the sentence instead of hearing me say base, you're not going to know if they're talking about the fish or the instrument, and that is not cleared up by the time the sentence is over. What are the 2 main types of inferences we make when comprehending text? We do backward, aka bridging, and forward or elaborative inferences. Backward inferences, where we relate what we are currently reading to what we just read, are required for understanding text and they are automatic. Forward inferences, when we try to anticipate or elaborate on what will happen, are not automatic or required for understanding. What is the difference between deep structure and surface structure in language? Deep structure is the meaning of the phrase, and surface structure is how we say it. Deep structures can be conveyed in multiple ways, while surface structures can only be conveyed in one. Let me give an example of that. I could say the same deep structure with 3 different surface structures. I could say, I went to bed at 11 p.m. I could say, 11 p.m. is when I went to bed, or I could say, to bed I went at 11 p.m. These sentences all tell you the same information, that at 11 p.m. I went to bed, but they are said differently. Okay, N400 ERP signals are given off when we process semantic violations, while P600 signals are given off when we process syntactic violations, demonstrating that semantics and syntax are processed by different parts of the brain. How does the use of passive voice affect sentence comprehension? Using a passive voice, in addition to saying things in the negative, for example saying, "I did not wear a sweater yesterday," decrease sentence comprehension. That's it for studying. Now I am gonna go to bed so I can get a good grade on my exam tomorrow. And that's it for
Annalise Explains. Yay!
semantic violations. Hi! No, it's okay, it's tutoring time. And I only have 2 more phrases left. It can go in the bloopers reel. Signals are given off. What? Why are you staring at me, bro?
Is it better if you have someone to tell it to instead of a camera?
Sure. That's the main thing. I say words weird. And that's the end of the video. I made a really dumb little jingle.